What's up, everybody? Matt McGee here with the Wolfpack at eXp Realty. Thanks for stopping by my channel. I want to take a minute to introduce a very special guest that I have on the channel today. It's my business partner, Connor Steinbrook from Dallas, Texas. Connor has over 2,200 agents in his organization at eXp Realty, so he's a real wealth of knowledge. He's a super analytical mind, deep thinker, and today we're going to talk about things that you should consider if you're thinking about a divestiture, merger, or acquisition with respect to your independent brokerage. We are going to talk a bit about eXp Realty, not telling you that we're pitching you to join our firm, but if you do want to explore the opportunity, please feel free to give us a shout. And without further ado, here's Connor. Hey everybody, thanks again for showing up to the channel. I'm here with Connor Steinbrook, and how you doing, Connor?
What's up, man? How you guys doing?
Not much, man. All is well. So I kind of just wanted to take this opportunity in this shifting market to discuss a little bit about things to consider as an independent brokerage when exploring selling or merging your real estate brokerage with another firm. And I didn't think that there would be anybody better to have on this call than you, with your background and extensive knowledge of both the markets and our model and kind of the overall way of the world right now.
Well, let's do it.
All right. So I'm just going to kind of go through some things to think about, and then we can spitball ideas back and forth with respect to what that means if an independent brokerage or even an agent with a large team is considering. Okay. So first, I wanted to talk a little bit about company culture. I think company culture is super important. It's something that any independent broker should be thinking about. And, from a company culture perspective, how are my existing agents going to thrive following either a merger and acquisition? So what are kind of some of your thoughts on how the importance of company culture plays into exploring an acquisition?
I mean, it's massive because if you think about how do we make money in a brokerage business, it's the front door minus the back door plus net sales, right? Meaning we have to bring people in the front door, attracting agents, growing the business. We have to make sure that we support them and build the culture within inside the company so that they want to stay, because if not, there's no culture. They don't feel welcome. They don't feel they have an opportunity to move through the years going forward to have not only a great income and a great lifestyle, but great relationships within that business and a great relationship in the marketplace where they're proud to say who they are. Then the back door opens up and you start to have attrition issues, right? So it's always how many can we attract, how many do we keep, and how many sales do they make, which creates our net income minus the expenses we run to run the business. So it's very important to understand that if you do not build that loyalty and that culture and that relationship inside your business, you're going to have attrition issues. And the reason behind this is it's a lot easier to quit a business opportunity than it is to quit a friend or someone that's poured into you that they know cares about you and respects you and is willing to stick it through tough times with you to get to the finish line. And so a lot of people are coming in and they're over promising and under delivering, and they recruit people at brokerage off of perception of value, meaning how many things can I make you think that you're going to get access to or have when you come over here, as big as I can verbally create this proposition of value for you that I can use my words intelligently to make you sound like there's this huge opportunity, if that makes sense. And there's the reality of what you're offering. It's a very big problem for a lot of brokers and team leaders is you're great at paying the perception, this huge value proposition, and then you get them to move their license over and they come in the front door, and guess what? There's no teeth behind that bite. And there's no reality behind what you promised. And this is when people get frustrated. This is when they feel lied to. And this is when they still have their bags packed. They leave and go out the back door. And not only are you not building your culture, you're destroying it, because guess what happens? That person goes to the next brokerage that they go to and says, this person, John Smith, over at so-and-so, they lied to me. They tricked me over. It was a big deal. I moved my business over and I got behind the scenes and there was nothing there. And I'm very frustrated. So it's the culture keeps people there and also keeps people excited to grow your business. So, you may not have a model like XP like we have where it's an override system for team building, but in traditional models, what usually happens is the, raving fan, right? If someone does good for someone, they're just going to go tell people naturally. So like if someone just joins a brokerage and you have a small independent brokerage and they have a great experience, when people ask them, how's it going? They're going to tell the truth, right? They're not going to lie and say, oh, it's going horrible, even though it's going great. So now you have a raving fan out there building. So you need to start thinking about not just retention for the business side, but retention for future business that can be, avoided from coming in because of the reputation that you're building from a bad culture in the marketplace. And this is more so for local businesses than national or international businesses, like what we're doing. But locally, this is very important.
Yeah. And I think that kind of dovetails nicely into the second bullet point I had here, which is, for these independent brokers, they should look for a company or a team with leadership, like, and respect, in the event that they want to stay on post merger, right? And I think you can speak to both culture and leadership. Having an organization of over 2,000 agents, I think we've built a family-like team. Although we have this large organization by most standards, right? But we're super tight knit. We get on calls. We do sorts of things like that. So, what are some of the things that you would say to an independent broker or team leader that's looking to either divest itself or merge with somebody else from the perspective of kind of dovetailing in with the existing leadership?
Yeah. So I had an issue early in my career with lots of different things and business I was in, giving up control. I wanted control over everything. I wanted to manage every bank account, every employee. I wanted to make sure I was the one making every call. And I almost, lost my mind, right? Because you can't control everything. And the more you try to control everything, the more you're out of control. So the way you gain control is to give it control of parts of your life or parts of your business that you're not an expert on. And you fill in the gaps of what you need in your business as far as skill sets that you should go out there and find yourself. But instead of doing it yourself, why not bring a partner or someone that you can merge with that can bring those skill sets in? So it's very common that you see this. For example, like you hear Mike Sherrard and I talk about Mike's like, he does this and I do this, and we meet together and we fill in the gaps that we both are missing, right? So what I'd be doing if I was you guys, and you're at that point where you're feeling like you can't scale, you're having limitations to scale, and you're trying to figure out what the next step is. There may be people in your marketplace that have the skill sets on social media, the skill sets on production training, a vertical that you add on an investment side or division to your business, or property management wing or something like that. They may have those working parts or that background of a decade of experience coming in that you can never get up to now, that you'd have to partner with unless you want to wait 10 years and pay the sacrifice that they did. So sometimes a business is quicker to partner with people instead of pay the price of time and effort and headache that we had to get to that level, because we can now go faster. So I'd be looking for people that plug in the weaknesses in your business, that you could also bring some plugs for their weaknesses, and then run the math on it, and then kind of get a feel of character of who the person you're potentially partnering with is, and does it make sense? And if it does, and you think you can do something long-term with this person, which is a question I'd ask, you shouldn't go into business opportunity, especially something this big, unless you can think, after all the data that you're going through and things that you're running, looking at, does this make sense financially? Do the numbers work? Does this make sense relationship wise and emotional wise? Can I tolerate this new partner or potential partners that I'm going to go through? Or is it going to be a nightmare, right? So I'd be taking a look at all these things and then finding someone that's doing something different that could add value to you, that you can fill in, adding value to them, that plugs a hole that they're missing.
Yeah, I agree completely. And, you kind of struck a chord right there when you were talking about running the math and doing the numbers. It kind of leads me into my next point as well, where, coming from a commercial banking background, I used to do loans for mergers and acquisitions in the private equity space. And often, the target would either the target or the acquirer would do an independent valuation, right? So you often hear people talk about looking at their brokerage and putting an independent valuation on their brokerage. What would you say to that? Do you think that that's something that's important? Do you think that there are ways around that? Because, when I look at things like our model, I think you may not necessarily be able to pin a figure on your future value, right? Because you start to really ingrain into your existing agents a completely different mindset that may lead you to a completely different level than you're at currently, right?
I mean, there's so many things that go into like a business decision. The first one I think of is, if you're at a point where you're selling your brokerage, ask yourself this question: why am I selling my brokerage, or why am I looking to merge or get away from this? Is it because of a performance issue, or is it, hey, you just want to cash out because there's a big profit type of that you think you can get to? Because sometimes people, like what's happening right now, Matt, is there's a lot of people that are contacting us behind the scenes, brokers. They're losing a lot of money. Then inflation's gone up. They're scared of this recession that we're going through.
Yeah, but liability, right?
Yeah, and they're losing all this money, but on the surface, people don't know. And they're stuck in a spot where they can't put the they have an office. They can't put the office up for sale because their agents will know, and their agents will go poof because they know there's a problem, and they have to do this kind of all on the down low. And if you guys are trying to sell something big, do you want very few people on the down low knowing, or do you want like as many people as you can know that you're trying to sell it? So they're having a very difficult time doing this. So that's one problem that they're going to have, that they need to figure out why they would be selling the property. Is it because it's a boat anchor and it's hurting them, or is it you're just trying to capture profit? Now, if you're just trying to capture profit and that was your goal, and you built this big business from 3, 5, 7, 10 years and you built it up, why would you sell your business? Is the thing to think about, because once you sell it, you can't get it back. And the reason why I like the model that we're at here at EXP is that I never have to sell the business. It's continuity of cash flow income stream coming in over my entire career as long as I hold my license here. And so a lot of times when you sell a brokerage, or what happens is you merge, you give up control. Now you're out of that position that can go back and take control again. So if you sell a brokerage, guess what? If you want it back, you either have to buy it back or you have to start one from the ground up. Where if you're just trying as to sell the brokerage to remove your time from it and to remove your stress from it, which is usually what they're doing. If it's not, hey, it's pulling me down as a bankruptcy, meaning it's making money, but they'd rather have the time for their grandchildren, or they'd rather have the time for their children and travel the world, right? That's a completely different thing, because now what you can do is you can retire your time, like at a model like ours, from the business, and you can retire from the stress of it, because you're holding a position in a model that you're not the one driving the time. So it just depends on a lot of variables of what they're trying to accomplish first. But if they're trying to just capture profit and get out of it, you have to ask yourself, why would you do that if you're going to plan to be in business for a long time? Because a lot of times we see it's just the same thing with like a house. Like, why do some people want to refi or sell their house to get the equity out of it, when if the goal is to buy a property for retirement that's going to be free and clear in 30 years? So what I think is you're seeing a lot of these brokers merge with companies, especially like EXP, because what it gives them the ability to do is retire from their time, retire from their stress, move over, hold their business in a position through our revenue share model. They can go travel the world. We have partners above us, partners below us, and the company around us that are going to keep growing and running that business. So they're retiring their time, they're retiring their stress, but they're not retiring from their income, which is what happens when you sell the brokerage. You get rid of the brokerage. Yeah, you get also rid of the time and the stress, but guess what? What if you need money in the future? What if you decide you're not as old as you thought you were and you're going to retire, and you thought you were done for life, and all of a sudden you realize, guess what? I wake up and I realize I'm an entrepreneur still, and I need to go out there and have fun and build business, because that's how I'm ingrained, right? It's like you put a tiger in front of a deer, even if it's not hungry, it's going to be like, there's deer right there, right? So those are just some things to think about. Whereas, what's your goal? Is it to completely exit everything, get away from it? Is it just to try to not go through bankruptcy? But if your goal is to stay in the business long term, and your goal is to, still put some time in, that's a different approach than if you're trying to exit it completely. But I would think of, are you trying to sell it, or are you trying to merge it? Because we're talking about two different things. Now, if you're trying to merge it, a lot of people are merging with companies like EXP because of the risk of the inflation and the risk of the recession right now. You're seeing hundreds and hundreds of brokerages come to EXP, hundreds of agents in each brokerage, some of them, because of the fear of the marketplace. They're not trying to exit the industry. They're trying to stay in the industry. They just need a safer ship to travel through the storm that they feel is coming. So are you trying to stay in the industry, or are you trying to leave it? And then the reason why are you trying to leave it? Are you trying to capture profit just because you see the profit there, or are you actually trying to save a sinking ship and a problem? Yep. And I touched on those all in a little bit different ways. So hopefully people can kind of read through the lines and kind of see what we're trying to get at. But it's all going to be variable off that individual on what they're trying to actually accomplish.
Yeah, sure. Their goals. And I think that, from the perception of independent brokerages as well, if they think that there's a cash windfall, an oft not thought of issue is tax implications, right? So if they're going to sell, maybe let's just say hypothetically, they're going to sell their brokerage for $400,000. Well, yeah, that's all pre-tax, right? And it's a one-time lump sum cash payment that's going to be reduced by a tax burden anyhow. Whereas, in a merger of equals, so to speak, coming over to EXP, there's no tax liability initially, and you're just going to have your ordinary income tax, right? So, go ahead.
Yeah, and just like another one, it's like another reason we've seen brokers do this is because, like, a lot of people don't understand this. Like, if you sell a decent sized brokerage, you're going to have all these performance clauses and different, things in that contract, which is like, let's say I'm buying a 100-person brokerage from Matt. Well, I don't want those 100 agents to leave tomorrow because they don't have a relationship with me, and Matt's worked with them for 20 years. So usually what happens is I'll have an agreement that Matt stays on for a year or a year and a half or whatever, and we're transitioning them out. And that there's metrics as far as incremental time windows throughout this that, hey, well, okay, well, now if there's 90 people here at this time or 70 left, then it's going to change the purchase price, right? So the risk of the broker, a lot of times this has happened, is they sell the brokerage for what they thought, then the team moves over and then the team starts eroding away and dissipating away. And guess what happens? Their profit's going down because of the agreement that they had. Whereas if you merge into something like XP, you're still in the game, not because your agents know it's because of a contractual agreement that you're really bouncing out on them in a year. You're actually in the game with them forever. And so you're still the person that built the culture, the person that built the unity to get that business there over decades is still the heart inside the system, instead of trying to transplant the heart away and expecting the agents to stay and just hoping that you, the buyer of the brokerage, can build a relationship strong enough with them going forward. But like a model like ours that allows for a merger instead of an acquisition, where you could just bring your team over and partner essentially like that with us, it's going to create a lot different surface level emotional, like psychological, like how people see their career there, because you're not just abandoning them and selling the brokerage disappearing, you moved over with them. And it's just a different system to operate through, if that makes sense. So
yeah, you as an independent broker still have a vested interest in your team.
Yeah. And it's like you decide how hard you want to work now. There's no requirement, and you're not the one carrying the liability. And if you want to go from a 40-hour week or 60-hour week, which is the time demand that was burning you out, then you come over here and go down to 20-hour week. You actually say, actually, I'm bored at 20 hours. Maybe I can actually increase the workload. A lot of times people want to sell things and get away from businesses and problems because that's what it feels like to them at the time. And all they can live in is the stress that they feel around them. And so they're trying to sell it, not maybe even just to get the profit, but just to get their stress away from it, just to move away from what's causing them the headache, right? And so just a change in atmosphere, not a change of industry, a change in style or system. It's not that they don't want to work hard. It's just that they're tired of having everything fall on their shoulders, all the risks, taxes, liability. I mean, this year, unless some craziness happens at the end of the year with all this, like interest rates, inflation, like we're going to sell well over 10,000 houses this year is what it's looking like. I mean, think about that. I don't write checks. I don't review contracts. I have no CPA bill. I have a 1099 given to me at the end of the year. So I do my taxes as fast as I can email an email that was sent to me to my CPA. So it's not just like people think about the front surface income possibilities, which are absolutely massive at our company right now. There need to read between the lines on the overall business side of things and how many value centers there are as far as like time management avoidance, capital allocation avoidance, meaning I don't have to have a bunch of money in my account that I need to be able to run the business. And if it goes away, I go out of business because we're running a low liability intense business model. So there's a lot of things to think about. That's going to be a lot longer conversation for a broker or team leader that would see this right now, that we have to have on a private conversation. We're really going to go into risk mitigation, scalability opportunities, and things like that you're never going to see on a random YouTube video on the internet. Like the reason why, if you're a broker watching this right now, you're seeing brokerages of 100 plus move to EXP, it's not because they came across a sales video on the internet. It came across because it started a conversation, and then you came behind the scenes and we ran real numbers, went into a real conversation where we're looking at facts, data, logic, reason, everything that goes into the business maturity decision that you need to make this decision. And by the time you're done with it, the math won't lie. I think you're going to realize that not only will the math work for you, but it work better for your agents. And then it puts the broker to the test. It's like, they all say they care about their agents. Well, let's see now, when financially it's better for them, but also for yourself. Can you drop the ego? I'm not bashing you guys, right? I have an ego too. And it was a big deal for me because I was like, I don't want to work inside of a company. But when I realized they were going to help me build $1 million residual income quickly without any debt, at any risk, it's just like, why am I costing myself so much money because my ego is so big? If I have a goal that I want to hit and there's a vehicle that can get me there faster, I'm going to throw these keys out and hop in this sucker because I'm going to fly down the highway to get there. And I'm just going to have to deal with the differences of the control and things like this over here, which in our own businesses, we have the same type of situation. So there's always something that we can't control. But if we have a goal to get to where we're trying to get to at the end, why not go as fast as we can get there? And I just saw that this is like a Lamborghini when everybody else is driving Corollas around, the marketplace. And I said, this is going to get me faster to the end game than a Corolla. But it's just something to keep in mind. But that's why a lot of brokers are coming over here. They're giving up a little bit of control, meaning they're not the center of the world, but some of them love that and they don't want to be that anymore. And they're having an entire business through the management side of the XP run for them, just for their monthly fee. And if they're closing transactions, what they're paying in off their split or their cap.
Yeah. And that kind of goes into two more points that of things that I'm thinking that, independent brokers should think about. One is with respect to having these discussions with their business partners, their stakeholders, their family and staff up front to see if this is something that, would benefit everybody. And if they're not having those discussions, it's going to be a more difficult topic, right? And if they are having them, maybe it becomes an open dialogue, which leads me into my next point, is keeping the lines of communication open, right? So if you're keeping the lines of communication open, we know transitions are always going to be difficult, right? They're always going to be difficult. There's always going to be bumps in the road. But if you have a partner that has number one, been through it, and we have lots of teams that have been through this, and you and Mike and our group as leaders have been through this, we're able to have those conversations and talk to these independent brokers and talk to their agents and explain to them like, hey, these are the systems that we have in place in order to combat some of these issues. Yeah, there are going to be bumps in the road, but we're going to get through it together. Trust the process, and you'll see the light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yeah, I mean, so like you talk about when they're coming over here, if they were to move their team to EXP.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think it's something that our group specializes in. Like we have the processes in place, and we've been to the rodeo, and we know how to do it. And yeah, nothing's always perfect in a big transition, but we have the know-how and knowledge to help the brokers and the agents through these issues.
Yeah, we do it in a full systematic sequential order process. We start out talking to you, the broker team leader, and go through with you to make sure the math makes sense for you, to make sure your understanding of the model makes sense for you, and to make sure your goals make sense to be in a company that you feel like they can be hit easier with us going forward. So first thing is we're having the conversation privately with you as the business owner. And the second thing is, after we have the conversation that you agree this makes sense for you, what does it make sense? Does it make sense for your agents? Essentially is where we're going to next. Now, if you know from the math and everything looks like it's going to be better for your agents, which I can assure you it's hardly ever we talk to anybody, and that's not trying to be like, oh my gosh, it's just the numbers work out the way we're set up. That's why we're cloud-based, avoids expenses, gives us opportunities that we couldn't otherwise. Then we're going to figure out how to bring the team over. And we do this in multiple different ways, depending on the size of the team. Let's say it's a small team and you're the center of the relationship to everybody, like 10 or less, and you're the one that sponsored them all. Then it's not going to be too difficult because you're the one in the with a strong relationship. But what if you scale a little bit and you've got 50 to 100 or 100 plus agents, and you're here, and in between you have other egos, right? Other team leaders, and you've got 5 or 6 team leads in the office that have 5 to 15 people. Now, what if that team lead wants to go and split to a different brokerage and compete against you and all sorts? So there's other different working parts that happen in any type of transaction, but we walk you through the entire process. Now, the other thing is there's processes on which we have to bring you over here on a time delay that we can get the executives and the corporate team involved in, that gives you the ability to not feel handcuffed and pressure to move right away. There is a transitional window. It's not going to catch you off guard. So we'll make sure you have all the numbers in place and the reasons for not just yourself from the entrepreneur looking down, but from the sales agent looking up. And we'll make sure the math works and everything works along the way. Now, one of the big reasons people are, I'd say, we're seeing over 300 independent brokerages come to the company a year. Why are they all coming? Is because a lot of them get to a point where they can't scale. And to scale, it seems like a nightmare to go through. So they're taking on all the risks. They're taking on all the dollar spending. They're taking on any technology or system, every adult daycare question, every payment processing is all on their shoulders, right? And usually when brokers get to 30, 40, 50 agents, they get to a point where they have to start hiring employees or paid recruiters or office managers come in and start assisting the growth of that office. What does that mean for that business owner? A couple of things. It means more money out of their pocket. So that profit that they've been building up to get here that they don't want to hire someone on because they like seeing it, it's going to have to go away because they're going to have to give it to someone just to keep what they have from not eroding away down, right? So they're going to have to bring someone in that's an expense out of their business, and it's a risk for their business because when you hire someone, unless you've worked with them before, you're hiring off of an interview or based off what they say they can do. This is a very big problem in hiring employees is performance in the interview is high, performance in the business is low, and you get caught into a situation where you gave up control of your business to someone that can't grow it, and now you're caught into a nasty spot. So you're giving up control, you're giving up money, and hopefully it works out, right? How often does that sound like it's going to work out?
Yeah.
Now, when you come over to EXP, instead of having to pay $50,000 to $100,000 for a corporate recruiter or someone to run the office, you now partner with DXP overnight. You pick up an almost 2,000 paid employee management system for no different than your monthly fee and your cap. You're going to have them handling all your payment processing, all your transaction closing, pretty much anything and everything for you. So the management side's done. Above you is the growth arm. So instead of paying for one individual broker or someone to come in, you now have 7 partners above you, 7 layers of support. So you would have Matt, you would have me, you'd have Louis, you'd have Mike Sherrard, #1 recruiter in the world. Now, let me ask you right now, if you're a broker, how much would you pay the #1 recruiter at the fastest growing brokerage in the world to do the activities that you probably pay someone locally to do for $50K a year? You can't. He would never do it for a dollar amount. You can never pay Mike enough to do what he's going to do for your business, which he'll do for you for free if you move your business over to work with us, because we're partners, we're sharing in the same goal and the same income stream. You can't pay people like us to come build your business. And that's not to be arrogant. It's you couldn't afford us because it wouldn't make sense, right? You're talking about people that make 7 figures or more a year, trying to pay them 50 to 100 grand a year to build a business. It doesn't make sense. So from the growth side, they have the partners above them, caliber of leaders that they would never get to work with ever that they could afford to pay for. 7 of them, partners that they're now working instead of 1, and they've avoided that expense. Now, a lot of brokers choose to go the other route, which is instead of paying for someone to grow the business, an employee or a partner broker, what they do is they give a compensation model to the agents underneath them to grow the business. Hey, if you sponsor John Smith, I'll give you $500. Or if you sponsor Susan, every house she sells, I'll give you $25 or $50 or whatever compensation is to get their agents an incentive financially to attract agents to the office. Now, the problem is when you're independent, those dollars come from where? They come out of your bank account. And if there's no more dollars to pay out, guess what happens? Now, when you move over to EXP, we have the revenue share model. So you have the partners helping you grow above you, but the company through the revenue share model is paying your growth arm underneath you. So you have the company paying your agents and a lot more than they're going to be paid a traditional independent to grow, $2,800 per capping agent. So you have the growth arm below you, growth arm above you at no expense to you, the management side of EXP taking off all the risk and liability, all the payment processing. I mean, imagine doing thousands of transactions and not even seeing a piece of paperwork and getting a 1099. Now you're starting to see why these brokers are coming. But that's why you're seeing, this type of movement over to models like ours, especially with the last one being the inflation and the recession. A lot of brokers were taken out last time. I heard statistics, I can't verify these, but I know that I've read them, that upwards of 50% of small independent brokerages went out of business during the 2007-2011 crash. Now, think about that. If that's anywhere close, even if it's half that or even a quarter of that, it's a pretty big risk.
Yeah.
So what are you trying to take away right now if you have family? Your risk, right? You want to make sure your family's protected. So I think that's all those reasons you're just seeing this bandwagon effect where these brokers are like, can't beat them, might as well join them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you kind of touched perfectly on my 7th point, which was like, basically outsourcing some of this to our paid employees from both a training, onboarding, day-to-day operations perspective. Those are things that we do have back office to take care of, alleviate some of that. You can focus on things you want to do. And one thing that I don't think we've mentioned where is the fact that we're a brokerage without borders. All of a sudden you're not licensed in one office or one state or even one country, right? Like all of a sudden the world is your oyster from a BD or, an employee growth perspective. All of a sudden people that you would have had conversations with years ago that were 3 states away, that were just a buddy, all of a sudden become either a prospect or a coworker, right?
Well, I mean, it's the real deal. And it's also diversification of risk. I'll give you a couple things to write this down. I need to write that down real quick before I forget. So one, it's going to increase your scalability as far as market share goes, because the size of your market directly impacts the size of your business. Let's say you have a business that's selling hamburgers. And out of 5,000 people in your local city, it can sell X amount of hamburgers out of 5,000. Well, let's say you have 15,000 people in that city. Well, pretty sure people like hamburgers at the same rate in most parts of the world, especially here in the US, right? So if you have 15,000 people in your city versus 5,000, but the same demand on an incremental rate is for that hamburger, how many are you selling in comparison, right? Many limitations brokers have is they cap their market share because their market's so small. And once again, going back into culture, if they had any tainting of the name at any moment or anything like that, or their productions, it can slow them down. So by opening up or by partnering at EXP day one, these brokers come over, they bring their team over, they go from a local geographically restricted business model, meaning tied to the market share that's only local, to overnight literally having an international opportunity to access almost two or maybe just over 2 million agents. And then they now have the ability to leverage the investment they put into their social media, meaning, you guys all have followers all across the country. So you took time, you took money to put your videos out, to put your content out, to attract these people, to get their attention. And so why put attention on someone who's you have attention from if you can't work with them? It makes no sense. So when you partner with EXP and you live in Florida, now those people you have attention from in California, they could be working with you. Your cousin that lives in Europe, now you could work with them. Your best college roommate that you never thought you were going to see again, but you knew was a real estate agent, lives in Australia. Well, hey, guess up, bro? Let's reunite, right? And that's how it happens. And so the scalability opportunities are massive in comparison to what a traditional model has. Now, think about this. What I was going to tell you is like the diversification of risk. So this is a true story. I live in Texas. I'm in Dallas, but a lot of my agents are in Houston. And we had a big flood. I forget which one this was called. There's always hurricanes down there. I forget.
Is it Harvey?
Yes, Harvey, but there's also another. But it was Harvey that was on it. But anyways, no, actually, Harvey is the one we had hit, and it was one before Harvey. I can't remember what it is. There's so many of them, unfortunately. But anyways, they had a couple of EXP agents I know had like 25, 28 houses in escrow, and they're about to get close, right? And guess what happens? They all get flooded. Mm-hmm. Do you think they're just going to close out these transactions, or does the insurance process start? Does the world just hit a pause button? Now think about this. If you need that money to pay your bills and you need that money to keep your office going, you're running an independent office and the world just stops, your life doesn't stop. What if your house didn't get flooded and you live in a big gated community with a freaking large mortgage and you have other businesses that you're taking money from this business to supplement your other businesses, and you had kids' colleges and all this other stuff? Before you know it, your cash flow stopped. And yeah, you're going to get it in the future, but what if your business goes down before then, after the entire process plays out? So what saved them was they built an national at the time, revenue share organization, and the floods were not hitting the other parts of the country. So the residual income was large enough coming from the revenue share model, because the diversification of risk they avoided that would have wiped out a local brokerage and completely destroyed that broker forever. But because they built a model through technology on a leveraged, larger market share, footprint, they were able to survive it because of that risk that they avoided. And I'll give you one more on this before we go on. Mike, we were just talking about Mike Sherrard. Here's the power of what can be done through a different type of model. He had put a video out on like a Facebook course or something like this. And an individual left him a message on his YouTube video. This is why you always respond to your comments, guys. And Mike goes through and responds to all his comments. And he responds to this guy who's like deep in the thread. And he was looking at his Facebook coaching. It got him into a conversation. When they were on Zoom, he found out that he ran a big brokerage over in India. And guess what happened a few months later? An entire over 100 person or so brokerage, I forget how many actually came over, it was right around that size. They brought their entire brokerage over to partner with Mike, who's from Calgary, Canada, who I sponsored from Texas. So boy from Texas, redneck down here, sponsored a kid from Calgary, who from a YouTube video, and the business model that allows us to have this happen, because of the EXP that it can't be done. Otherwise, he was then able to sponsor a 100-person business from a different part of the world. I mean, think about that, right?
Oh, it's amazing.
You know how much that costs?
Yeah.
$85 a month to be at this company. It's unbelievable when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of, again, it's just mind-boggling to the potential of this organization. And I think it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly, right? Kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about and think about and just bring to the attention to was if somebody is considering selling or merging their firm with another firm. And we kind of already talked about corporate culture, but I think the way that you cement the corporate culture is corporate activities, right? And I would tell you, I've been with EXP on and off since 2017. I left, came back. It ended up being a huge mistake financially for me. Not complaining, but I had some restricted stock units from previous transactions, lost them, the value went up, and it ended up being a pretty significant financial decision for me. I came back and I vowed never to make that decision again, right? But that being said, I'd never been to a corporate event and I'm going to EXPCon this October in Vegas, and went to the event down in Dallas where we met in person at Build, which I know isn't EXP sponsored, but they definitely partake and assist in it. And it was what were there, 4,000 to 5,000 agents there, and until you see that, you don't really understand number one, the power players in this company, number two, the scope and breadth of these events. And from all accounts, from everybody I've heard, and you can speak to this, EXPCon and shareholders are even bigger, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that you get to see it, you get to feel it. And it's a difference because you can sell a house anywhere. There's a ton of great companies, guys. If your goal is transactional income and you want to just sell houses to make your income, that's 100% fine. And a lot of people do, and they make great incomes. I was in a transactional business flipping houses for years. I flipped a bunch of houses, but I didn't want a long-term active income business. I wanted financial freedom. I wanted wealth. I wanted residual income, right? And so you don't get that traditionally in normal brokerages. EXP, we're publicly traded. We're giving ownership opportunities to the stock wars, and we're giving massive residual income opportunities. People are making 5, 6, 7, and even multiple 7 figures in residual income at our company. So when you go to these events, people are like celebrating their freedom. Like it's a different, it's a different, right?
It's intense.
And I used to give names. I won't do it anymore. Like you don't see people wearing hats for their brokerage around like the mall or at the airport. Why do people wear their own hats? And why do people wear EXP stuff? And because people are proud about their company. If you want to talk about culture, if you don't know what that means, it means you don't have it at your current company, unfortunately, and you need to find it somewhere else. And I think that's what happens when people come over here is the immediate comparison effect of it's like going from a bar on like College Corner that's like playing old music and there's 1 or 2 people in the corner to they pop into this. It's like people are jumping out the windows and excited because the energy it's infectious because people they feel hope and they feel that they have a better future here because so many people around them that came before them have proven it to them. And so they've seen the stories of the people at these events. They're showing what happened to them when they joined 3 years ago. And these people are coming and they're saying in 3 years, that could be me too. So it breeds a lot of hope. And then it's also a lot of people are excited that their lives changed over the past few years. And it's just a complete different environment. And if you think of us as a video game and a metaverse on the computer, it's like you're missing the point that, yeah, we operate digitally, but right now, are you watching me through something digital, right? If you're watching right now. So the whole world's run this way. But when people get there and they realize that the caliber of people in our company are there as well, and they start seeing these huge celebrities, Tony Robbins and the biggest in the game, and they're seeing thousands of people jumping up on their chairs and chanting EXP, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know something like this actually existed until they experience it. My mentality was this, it was closed-minded because I remember letting a few people talk to me about EXP in the beginning, and I never really gave them a full chance. I was just kind of like appeasing them, right? It was just like, sure, show me what you got. It wasn't genuine inside, my side saying, is this a real opportunity? And that's why I missed the opportunity because I wasn't prepared for the opportunity because I was blowing an opportunity off before I ever had a chance to see if it was one, if that makes sense. And then the next thing was I was approached in an incorrect way by a couple of new agents in the company who I was just like, man, they come in here with greed. It's like they just want me to come over here and make a bunch of money is what it felt like. So I kind of put EXP off for about 2 years. And what happened was I was speaking at a big real estate conference in Mississippi, and the number one guy at our company was speaking at that event. And I was trapped into a speaker's house with him for a few days because I was put in the speaker's house and I couldn't get away. And that's when I realized he showed me he was making 6 figures a month in residual income. And I was like, okay, you got my attention now. Let me see what you're wanting to show me. That was the first time I ever opened my mind and said, okay, let's see how this works based off business principles. Let's actually look in the numbers. Let's look, will this work? Instead of me trying to figure out how it won't work so I can get back to my day, I actually said, can this work? And when I said that, it was immediate. I saw it and I came over here as fast as possible, and the rest is history. So I think a lot of you, if you would revisit with an open mind and say, does this work? Doesn't mean you have to take the opportunity, but legitimately look at it and say, how can I see if I can make this work? And if you can, then it should work. If not, then don't worry about it. But that's part of the reason why, I didn't come over sooner. But I think, when people come over to the, these big events and they see everybody in person and they get to experience it, you're not going to see that if you're on a Zoom call with someone talking to you about EXP. You're not going to experience that if you're at a lunch talking to one person about EXP. Now, if you're a big broker or team leader and you want to get to EXPCon, reach out to Matt. We'll make sure you get out there and you'll get to come hang out with us and experience it live time. And that's next month in October.
Yep. Looking forward to it. Well, hey man, I think that pretty much wraps up most of the considerations I had. I appreciate your time and insights as always. It's always a great conversation and super insightful. And I hope it's eye-opening to some people that look at this and say, you know, if they're thinking about a change, if they're thinking about selling their firm, if they're thinking about doing something different or maybe stepping away for a little bit of time, hopefully this is something that people can look at and maybe have that aha moment where they can alleviate some responsibility and while increasing income, correct?
Yep. I mean, if you want to have that conversation, we go through, guys, about like a 1-hour conversation with you where we're going to go through a lot of high level talking points that you're probably never going to find on a video anywhere, no matter how hard you research. And these are usually the talking points that when people find these out, these are the decision maker or the mover, the needle movers, I guess you could say. And if you want to, you know, let us run your numbers for your brokerage. A lot of times when people see the math run down, that's when they're like, oh, wow, I had no idea. So what I would tell you right now also is do not take the math test unless you know how to answer the questions on the math test. And I didn't take the math tests. I took a lot of math tests and I didn't know how to take the answers or have the answers. If that makes sense. So we want to make sure you have the right information, because I've actually had a couple of brokers almost not join us because they ran their numbers themselves and it came out horrifically different. And then when we showed them that when we ran the numbers, they're like, well, that's not what I came up with. So make sure that you at least have the right information. That's another thing that people sometimes mess up. And then if we need to, we can get you involved with the executives. If we need to get the vice presidents on and you want to talk to any of the top leaders in our company on the corporate side, we can do this for you as well. So not saying you have to come to USP, just saying you should have curiosity to maybe have an open mind to look at it on a level that you probably haven't seen it before. And maybe you'll see what we saw when we did it the same way that we would show you, if that makes sense. But just reach out to Matt. We'd be grateful to talk to you guys. We're always looking for cool partners and people that are, you know, stuck in business, or they don't like their business right now, or they just want, you know, to move in a different direction and open up a new chapter in life.
Yep. Or just some new growth strategies, right?
Yeah. Just not do it on your own. You know, like I came from team sports. I was a quarterback and I played team sports, baseball, basketball, football my whole life. And when I got into real estate, I first came in as an investor. I was a full-time investor for a long time, something like 7 years before I got licensed. And if I go flip another house, it's just like more money goes into my bank account. If I go buy another rental, it's just another rental on my portfolio. But what about my team? What about the partners? So when I came over to EXP, it created a different energy, a different excitement. So if you guys have that, like, you know, background where you were competitive and you did play team sports, I think you're going to like the idea of stepping back into your old feeling in your body of how that feels, because you are working with your friends, you are working with your partners, and you're all working together, not just because you're trying to win a football game. You're trying to win in life. You're trying to change your life, and you're trying to give a life for your kids that they'll have a great one to live in. So this is what this company does for us, guys. It's not cliche. This is a life-changing opportunity. You hear it all the time, but you're hearing it a lot of times from the wrong people. New people in our company that don't know what they're talking about, overexcited, emotional, out of greed, they're coming to you. Come sit down with someone who's looking at alpha business logic principles and actually looking at a calculator. And I think you're going to have a different experience, and then it may make sense. And this may be something that you're completely written off for 2.5 years like I did. And I was like, I actually had to pull stuff off the internet because I was like, I'll never join EXP, right? And then I basically did. And it was the best decision I made in business.
Yep. Well, thanks a million, brother. I appreciate your time. It was an awesome conversation, and I look forward to the next chance to do it again.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you at EXPCon. And
right on.
If you guys want to go and you see us before that, reach out to Matt. We'll make sure you get down there and you get to hang out with us. Other than that, wish you the best with your businesses, guys, and I'll see you when I'll see you.